Guys, this is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Dynamo mains. I think we finally did it. I think we won. After all this time of complaining about the weapons inconsistencies, constantly missing kills, not living up to its potential, I think it finally got the help that it needed. But first thing out of the way, I think this is the best patch we've ever gotten in this game. Like, straight up, there are just so many changes that are just so good, but I can't exactly go over all of them, but man, there is some really good stuff in here. So let's scroll down here. A lot of quality of life changes, but one of the big ones is this right here. Umbrellas are actually back. They're not bad anymore. At least, I'm hoping so. This seems to be them finally addressing the one issue that plagued umbrellas for so long, for years now. Made it so that when a player opens Umbrella's canopy, the canopy opens on other players' screens quicker than before. This is to decrease the delay between the canopy opening on the user's screen and the canopy opening on the other player's screens as much as possible. So with this change, I think umbrellas might actually be back. Now, there are some other problems that they face. Splatbrella still has its damage issues, but Recycle Umbrella still has its own, stuff to deal with as well, though I'll get into that a little bit later because I think one of its biggest problems just got fixed. Made it easier to place squid beacons and bubblers close to elevation differences. That's nice. Made it so that scattered weapon and gear defeated player vanishes quicker than before. Not sure why this is the case, but okay, it's there. Made it so that when a swimming player returns to inkling form and uses a weapon right away, the ink on their body vanishes quicker than before. I guess this is just like, just nice little, touch-ups and things make the game look cleaner. For this one, this will alleviate the decreased visibility when the player is the same color as the ink on the ground, even when in inkling form. So I guess when people dip in and out of ink, when they finally rise out of it, it'll be easier to, track them down and actually, fight them essentially, so that's nice. Made it so that when a player is moving at the edge of an elevation difference, a phenomenon where that player moves back and forth between the higher and lower elevations in a short period of time on other players' screens will occur less often. I mainly only seen this in tower control, though some of my friends have pointed out that's happened in other instances as well. So that's nice that they removed that. Made it easier than before to jump while moving along the edge of terrain. That's nice. I like this. Made it so that when equipping the mint decapitator and charcoal decapitator and holding the ZR button, the sight that indicates where the attack will impact or terminate displays just like when not holding the ZR button. So this took me a little bit to figure out, but basically what this is trying to say, at least this is what I'm thinking it's trying to say, is that when you equip the decapitator, you'll have the little circle reticle whenever you are facing a potential target. That kind of shows you where to aim and whatnot, but when you hold onto your charge slash, it goes away. So I'm guessing they're adding it to the charge slash now, so that's easier for you to actually see where your slash will connect. So it's just a nice quality of life change for the decavs. I really didn't expect it to get anything this patch, but stuff like this I do appreciate, especially after what I was mentioning in my last video. Now to the weapon changes. Arrow spray, increased radius of ink splatter at the point impact by approximately 3%. So I guess it paints better, as if it really needed to, but okay, I guess. For the OG blaster, custom blaster, reduce the amount of time it takes to begin recovering ink after firing by 1/20th of a second. Yeah, this is nice for it, you know, can't really complain about that here. Flash Blaster and Clash Neo, movement speed while firing is now 4% faster. I won't lie, that does sound kind of annoying, but I mean, how else would you really, you know, buff the weapon? Like, you wouldn't want to buff its damage because its AoE is just ridiculously large, so I guess this is just one of their ways to get around that. S-Blast, reduce the continuous fire interval by about 1/12th of a second. Nice, yeah. Actually, this is pretty nice overall, now that I think about it, because if you're like constantly like, say you're jumping in and out of ink and you're shooting like your short range blast, then like it'll just be a lot easier for your blast to like hit consecutively. So I guess if you get indirects, then you will probably kill faster overall, which is nice. So good to see S-Blast getting some more love. Carbon Roller. Now this is a weapon I don't think really needed a buff, in all honesty, but hey, here it is. Adjusted the damage fall off rate based on the distance of horizontal swings, allowing it to deal 50 damage or 100 damage farther than it did before. So its fall off is a lot better than this one. I'm not a big fan of. Slightly expanded vertical swings collision detection with players to make it easier to hit opponents. Now, I already thought that Carbon Roller had a pretty, like, decent time, you know, getting kills. I never really, even when I use Carbon, I never really had a problem with, like, vertical flick, like, missing or getting kills, but I don't know, maybe Carbon mains will say different, but either way, the weapon was already in a solid spot, and it's better now, so ooh, I guess, but I mean, hey, shoutouts to you Carbon Roller mains out there. Now here's the big one, at least for me. Both dynamos adjusted how horizontal swings fling ink to leave fewer gaps in inking or attacks than before. This right here was what I've been asking for so long. After playing Dynamo for, well, if you're accounting as Splatoon 2 time as well over 6 years at this point, but one of the main things that this weapon lacked was paint. Like, the more I played it in zones, the more I played it in like every other mode, like, its paint was one of its biggest, like, sort of, like, letdowns, especially for a weapon of its, you know, stature. Like, you know, it's supposed to be big and slow, but it's supposed to have a lot of power behind it, and a lot more ink to compensate for that lack of speed, and it just didn't really have that. Now, back, I believe it was in December, they did actually buff up the Dynamo's horizontal swing hitbox so that it actually does deal a lot more damage more consistently. But the main issue with that is with the ink splotches that would like fly out, they would be so spread out that it would just overall come out to be less damage overall. So say if you were directly like right in front of a person, or at least like a good distance away from them, but not too far to where you wouldn't be able to one-shot them, a lot of the times the ink that's flung only like a small patch of that will actually hit the person, and that'll overall just result in you either completely whiffing, where the ink will just fly over their heads, or you just wouldn't get the damage value that you like want. So depending on how this is implemented, this could be absolutely huge for the weapon. Like, this change alone could definitely like bump it up like a tier. Like, even if the attack consistency isn't there, just having the more consistent paint, I think is just such a big change. Like, it really helps the weapon out a lot. That means you'll get a lot more coolers, you'll get a lot more super chomps, especially after Gold Dynamo got that buff where it got reduced to 180p a little while ago, which we'll get to that later. But yeah, I'm super excited about this change. I wasn't really expecting Dynamo to get any sort of buffs in this patch, let alone like even further down the line, if I'm being completely honest, but I am so glad that it actually is getting some love and is actually addressing like the main things that like a lot of players like myself have been, you know, complaining about. So yeah, no, here's hoping that the weapon feels even better than it has before, and you're definitely going to be seeing me play the weapon a lot more from now on. Like, I'm just so happy this thing actually, you know, got some form of attention. So yeah, there's my thoughts on the Dynamo buff. Now we get on to big swig rollers. Increased damage, horizontal swings deal to distant opponents from 35 to 40. There is no change to the damage at distances that deal 50 damage or more. So overall, the horizontal swings are gonna deal more consistent, like, proper damage. So that would mean... that basically mean that it would combo a lot easier into other, you know, other weapons, attacks. So, you know, say if you got hit by like a Stamper Slash, then if a big swig just happened to roll up on you and then hit you with a horizontal swing, even from like a decent distance away, then that'll definitely take you out. It's just a nice little, like, quality of life addition, and I am surprised that they've been consistently like buffing Big Swig up like seemingly each patch, because last patch the Big Swig Express got 190p on its Ink Storm, so it's nice to see the weapon get some more love. It definitely is the weakest out of all the rollers, so it can use all the help that it can get. Then we go to the brushes. I'm just going to cover both of them since it's the same buff. Slightly expanded the collision detection with players for the ink plung when swinging the brush to make it easier to hit opponents. This is just nice overall. Like, brushes, like, they'll definitely take this, like, making it so that their actual swing attacks will actually hit people. I think this will be even bigger, I want to say, for probably Ink Brush, only because it has like shorter range, so just buffing that up a little bit with how fast its kill time is, it's really nice for it. Octobrush definitely gains a lot out of this as well, so it's just making the weapons overall feel more consistent, which I appreciate seeing. Now, these two are interesting. So, these two weapons were the new ones that were introduced in the, I forgot the name of the season specifically, but essentially the spring season. The Dowser Dualies and the Recycle Rella, they both also got their second variants in this current season. So, with the dowsers, reduce the amount of ink consumed when firing by approximately 14%, and then reduce the amount of ink consumed by dodge rolls from 12% of the ink tank to 10%. This is just huge for the weapon, because one of its main issues was like ink efficiency issues, to the point where I know a lot of dowsers would either run like 1 or 2 subs of main saver just to like alleviate, you know, how much like downtime you'll have when you're shooting shots, and just basically it just takes up some space in what could be other abilities that you could run on it. So now they don't really have to do that anymore. I think the reduced amount of ink consumption on the dodge rolls is especially big, because if you've played Dowser Dualies before and you dodge rolled, man, that thing just guzzles your ink tank like nobody's business. But rightfully so, considering how, like, I mean, me personally, I think the Dowser Dualie dodge roll is pretty strong in terms of its, like, it's got decent range, it's got good DPS, and maybe a 4-shot, but those shot velocity on it is so fast that it doesn't even feel like that. So, losing less ink when it comes to doing those is just so nice overall, so, you know, it's a nice buff for it. I know people are wanting to have its paint be buffed, but you know, in the meantime, this is just a nice little addition to the weapon. It'll definitely make it feel nicer overall. Recycle Umbrella. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with this thing. I had so much hope for it in the previous season when it was first revealed. Now, if you didn't know, I'm also a big fan of the Umbrella class, which is why I was super happy with the Umbrella changes that they listed up above. And when this thing came out and I saw that it had like 90 damage on its attacks, I was like, ooh, yeah, this thing's gonna be a menace. And then having played it for like over like a month or so, the flaws of the weapon just became more and more apparent to me, and it just came to a point where I just didn't really feel like playing the weapon as much anymore. Like, it just had so many problems, not just like, you know, standard Umbrella problems, but like problems with the main weapon itself. Primarily its shield. And in this season, the second kit, it has Toxic Mist and Splashdown. Splashdown is super good on it, I love Splashdown on it, but Toxic Mist was just kind of like, like, I'm kind of finding it hard to really find good use cases for it. I can kind of understand what they were going for, but I don't really think it works well in practice. But yeah, no, I was just really hoping for this weapon to get some sort of buff just so, you know, I can give it like another go, and I think this might be it. So, reduce the time required for cannabis lost by being launched or broken by an opponent to recover by about 1/3 of a second, so 20 frames. The shield will recover 20 frames faster than it did before. That is huge. Like, that basically means you'll pretty much be able to constantly throw out Umbrella shields, and if they get broken, then you just pretty much get it like right back up, like almost instantly. That probably need to be tested, but that 20 frames is nothing to scoff at, so I'm definitely looking forward to picking this weapon back up again. Mainly Recycle 2, just because I've really wanted to play another Splashdown weapon, and this is probably like one of my best, like, you know, candidates, so yeah, that in tandem with the Umbrella changes, we'll see how well that goes. Now we got some special changes. Reef Slider, increase the radius of the explosion area that deals 70 damage by about 10%. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really like this change. But, decrease the radius of the ink splatter from an explosion by about 5%, so less Reef Slider cheese, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know how I feel about the blast radius being even larger for like the 70 damage, because that'll just combo into so many things. It's good. It's really good. I'm just not a big Reef Slider fan, like in terms of fighting it, but it definitely is a special that needs some help, so hey, if this helps it to, you know, actually feel like more of a threat at times, then, you know, good for it. I just mainly hate the special in terms of like splat zones with Reef Slider cheese. The decreased radius of ink splatter might be a way to address this, but not sure by how much this will really affect certain zones maps, but we'll just have to wait and see. Overall, Reef Slider got a good buff. It basically got like a similar buff to what Splashdown did in like the last patch, I want to say, either last patch or last mid-season patch, where the splash radius was reduced, but the speed was increased on it. And then with this, they just increased the explosion radius that deals 70 damage. Alright, ink fact. Minnesota, when the ink shot impacts a wall, the explosion will also ink nearby ground. And then Minnesota ink shots impacts ground, explosion will also ink nearby walls. So I'm guessing this is a situation where if you shoot an ink back shot and it happened to hit up against a wall, it would explode, but it wouldn't paint the floor right in front of the wall. So now it does that, and vice versa, where you shoot the ground and it happened to be right up next to a wall, the ground will be painted, but the wall wouldn't. But now that's like completely changed, so now the wall will be painted as well. I don't really know how much this will affect Inkback in the grand scheme of things, but it is just nice that it is getting some buffs, like, and that's getting some attention from the devs. It's not exactly the buffs that it needs, but it is at least getting something. Now, Super Chumps. This is what I was talking about when I was going over the dynamos. So for Gold Dynamo specifically, reduce the time between decoys falling and exploding from about 4 seconds to about 3.5 seconds. I want to say this right now, I think people might sleep on this. This could be a pretty significant buff, depending on how it's actually played out in the game. Because one of the main ways people wanted to address the sort of weak points of Super Chomp was just increasing the speed at which the decoys detonated. And they did that, but they also increased the time, or rather decreased the time, that the decoys fall into place. So it's going to be harder to really anticipate them and to take them out in time. So something like this on like the Bamboozler Mark II, like Fizzies and Super Chumps, that's going to be quite the menace in Splat Zones, I feel. And then for Gold Dynamo, this is great because like Super Chump was already like a free ink refill, and then on top of that decoys like exploding faster, you'll be able to combo your swings easier into it, on top of the fact that it could paint for chumps even easier than it did before. Like, man, Dynamo's just eating so well in this patch. Especially Gold Dynamo. I think Gold Dynamo really won here. People will probably still pick the Vanilla Dynamo for cooler, because I mean, it's cooler, but this is just so huge for the weapon. But that being said, I think people need to also remember that NZAP 89 got their points for special reduced from 180 to 170. So now we have a 170 Super Chump weapon in the game. And if this buff turns out to be significant enough to really put Super Jump on the map, then I think that'll be the main sort of weapon that you want to play chumps for. There could be a case for the Inkline Tri-Stringer, but I think you'll just mainly see NZAP 89. Now, we got some nerfs here for Trizuka and Inkjet, and it's kind of like an indirect buff to Big Bubbler. So for both the specials, decrease the damage dealt to the Bubbler to about 67% of what it was before. So now Big Bubbler is just even more of a Zuka slash Inkjet counter. I guess they're really trying to push that special to be a counter to these, even though for Trizuka specifically, the main issue with the special is that you just can't really react to it, like, legitimately. Like, unless you can see them from like across the map, and you physically see them pull out the Zuka, you're not really going to be able to react to someone just popping the Zuka and then shooting you like out of nowhere, like if they were, say, behind you. Like, I think the special needs more, like, slightly more startup time, just so you can't like instantly just pop it like right as soon as you get the special. That's besides the point. Inkjet, I don't really know why Inkjet caught a stray. I don't really think it was that threatening of a special, at least not in comparison to Zuka. Like, it isn't exactly in the glory days that it was like during ballpoint meta, but it's still a great special. I don't know. I don't really know what data they have on this special, but hey, if you see a Bubbler on the other team and you have an Inkjet weapon, just be more mindful when you pop your Inkjet so you don't just waste it, essentially. Kraken. Increase the amount of time to finish charging up a charge attack by about 1/12 of a second. So basically, this just means you can't really spam the charge attacks as much as you were able to before. Which, I will admit, even when I was playing Kraken with, say, like, the custom E-Leader, like, charge attacks were just so fast. Like, you can just consecutively do them, like, one after the other, like, super quickly. And them increasing the amount of time to do that definitely kind of reins the special in a bit, which I'd say overall is fair. Because considering how big the hitbox of the special is when it's attacking, and the fact that it's a full invincibility special, and that it got its base speed buffed a couple patches ago, I'd say this is like a fair sort of change. And then for some of the weapons, you know, to offset this sort of nerf, they made Crack-On Roller 170p for Kraken. I really don't like that, but hey, it's there now. Gonna have to get used to that. And then Blob or Deco going from 200 to 190. This is nice for it, I feel. I mean, Blob paints pretty decently, and this will just kind of incentivize them to be even more aggressive with like Kraken and whatnot. So yeah. There's a lot of other quality of life stuff too that I probably won't cover, but just know that there's a lot of really nice changes in here, like being able to not have Booyah be sent when you're trying to super jump, like say back to your spawn, like that's a nice change. Being able to rapidly press A to go through the XP animations and just basically set up another match in both regular multiplayer and Salmon Run is so nice. Like, there's some really good stuff in here. And then this basically just goes over their design philosophy for this current patch. For the TLDR, they basically recognized that the Brellas were not, you know, responding or like playing how they're meant to be played in the player's hands, so where when they put out a shield, the shield won't pop up on the other player's screen, and thus makes it so that the shields effectively don't exist. And so they even addressed that the reason why this was the case, or at least even more of an issue than it already was because of a fix that they did for Brellas in one of the earlier patches. So, yeah, I'm honestly surprised they were pretty transparent about, you know, why the Brellas were suffering, and like, you know, the reasons for why this was happening to begin with. But, I don't think I've ever really seen such like a detailed, like, patch, like, description from Nintendo, like, ever, if I'm being real with you. So it's just really nice that they finally seem to be addressing the Brella woes that have ailed the class for way too long, and I'm really happy that Brellas will finally, you know, hopefully just be put on the map, you know, finally be a real like weapon class and be respected once again. And then there's some other stuff here. They're talking about the specials. Any changes to increase the reliability of damage dealing effects of Reslider, slightly decrease the impact of inking. For that reason, this is an upgrade when used to defeat enemies. It'll be slightly more difficult to use to instantly ink terrain again and again. Okay, so this is them actually addressing the slider cheese. They're like, hey, this ain't okay. We want you to use this special for combat, not for paint. And so it is nice that they seem to recognize that that paint buff that they did for it was not the greatest thing. Ink fact made it easier to use by alleviating phenomenon where grounds or walls were not inked depending on the... Again, I don't know if this really addresses the ink facts issues, but it's nice. Super Chomp made it easier to combine with follow-up attacks used by main weapons, shortening the time for opponents to deal with the chomps. Yes, this is pretty much what the special wanted. Super nice for it. We'll have to see if this becomes a threat later down the line, but just overall such a nice change, really what the special needed. Kraken Royale, slightly extending the time required to charge. We have created differentiation between the use of charge attacks and jump attacks. Pretty much they don't want you to be just charge spamming the whole time. They want you to use the jump attacks of the Kraken and just be more creative with the special. For Trizuka, Inkjet made changes to damage efficiency towards Big Bubbler, closer to that of other special weapons. Oh, okay, I see now. So I'm guessing Zuka and Inkjet, in relative to other specials, were dealing more damage to Bubbler than they were supposed to. So I guess it's a fine change. Mainly for Zuka. Inkjet, I felt like Bubbler was able to tank its shots pretty well, especially after the HP buff that it got. Beyond that, we have made other changes to improve gameplay comfort, you know, stuff like that. Changes to alleviate the issue of scattered weapons and gear blocking sight. Changes to stabilize display when an opponent is at the edge of a height difference. And then plan on releasing the next update at the end of the current season. The update will make changes to multiplayer balance, including lowering the abilities of select weapons. I wonder what those could be. Range Blaster. Well, that being said, I think that pretty much covers this whole patch. I wasn't expecting to really cover this whole thing, but I'm just so excited about this patch. Like, there's just so much good stuff in here that I wanted to really go into detail on like each of the different changes. Especially this. This is the holy grail of it all. You're definitely gonna expect me to really be back on that Dynamo grind from now on. Like, this gives me more motivation than ever to really try and push the weapon. And I'm just so glad that, you know, the devs recognized it's one of its main weaknesses and seems to be finally addressed. Now, vertical flick is still kind of an issue, but honestly, this is mainly what I wanted for the weapon. I very rarely use vertical flick, and horizontal is just the main way to use this weapon for pain, attacking. Like, you know, vertical flick might as well not even exist, but it has its uses. I'm just glad that the weapon got buffed. That being said, if you liked my little analysis of the patch, leave a like on the video, subscribe if you want to see more Splatoon 3 content. I'm definitely going to be playing a lot more Dynamo, especially with the buff that it got. I'll also be playing some Recycle Brella too, because that, with like the splashdown and like the Brella changes, like I'm going to be playing Brellas even more than I have before. I already 5-starred the Sorella Tentabrella, but I'm definitely gonna be giving Recycle Brella another shot. And yeah, just overall some really good changes. Like, I feel like this will really, you know, change things up for the game, which is something that I've wanted and I feel like a lot of people have wanted for quite a while now. So yeah, it's just nice to see the devs, you know, taking these steps. I think because it's getting towards the end of this game's like update cycle, not necessarily in terms of patches, but in terms of like seasons, like I feel like the devs are finally starting to gain an idea of like what they want for the game and like how to sort of really change things without like going too far. So that's nice to see. And yeah, with that being said, hope you guys have a nice day. Let me know what your thoughts on the patch are down in the comments below. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Take care, y'all.